Welcome back to American Zarathustra. This is a very, very special episode today. Today we have somebody with us that is very hard to introduce, perhaps the most difficult guest I've ever had to try to introduce. So instead of doing that, what I'm going to do is kind of let him introduce himself through a video at his YouTube channel, and that's not the video. So I will start again and search for the video and be very graceful about it. Today we have my friend and an amazing artist and songwriter, vlogger, blogger, all around amazing human being, a gentleman named Pilleater. A Pilleater, a lot of people say, well, what's up with that name, Pilleater? And what's he all about? There's something crazy going on here. Well, you're very soon to find out. And I would say that the first thing I want to mention is that I discovered Pilleater, I think in, 2017, I would say. And he was the first white identitarian that I sort of discovered. And so I thought, wow, this is really cool stuff. And I'm just starting out with American Zarathustra, kind of getting my bearings with that media. And so I did my first show with him, and that's in 2017. So this is really, really awesome to kind of come sort of full circle in 2021. And so without further ado, who is Pilleater?
Everybody thinks Pilleater is an idiot. No one takes him seriously. Everybody thinks Pilleater has a fascination with Jamie Stewart that goes nowhere.
Everybody thinks Pilleater is weird for liking Mitski. Everybody thinks Pilleater is an anti-white Jew who wants to kill everyone. Everybody thinks Pilleater is a loser who lives in his mom's basement, worked at Wendy's. Everybody thinks Pilleater is a narcissist who's obsessed with YouTube and he's trying to get subscribers to get money. Everybody thinks Pilleater is some kind of far-right neo-Nazi who doesn't have the intellect to understand Marxist or critical theory. Everybody thinks Pilleater hates gays, and no way he would ever. He's a self-hating gay. Everybody thinks Pilleater is a traitor, and you shouldn't trust him. Everybody thinks Pilleater is non-white. Everybody thinks Pilleater is some school shooter. Everybody thinks Pilleater is not talented. No way he can have a master's degree. Everybody thinks Pilleater is Alex Gendler's neighbor who lives upstairs in Brooklyn. Everybody thinks Pilleater is some fanboy who likes Mitski, Anna Nakana, and a bunch of Asian girls he found on Google and now is completely obsessed with them in a weird school shooter kind of way. Everybody thinks Pilleater should make more content on YouTube, yet YouTube censors everyone from the past 2 years, and Pilleater has received over more than 9 strikes and could lose any of this data at any second. That's why he uploads to BitChute or just doesn't bother uploading new material anymore. Everybody thinks Pilleater is just some Chad that wants to abuse women, and that's all he cares about is PUA and pickup artistry and having sex with as many people as possible. And no way would he ever want to settle down and get married and have children and live the healthy life, right? Everybody thinks Pilleater hates everyone, when in all actuality, everybody Pilleater has talked to hates Pilleater. Everybody thinks Pilleater is an untalented artist that won't get anywhere in life. He'll just be doing UPS seasonal work every year and make more music that nobody will listen to on Bandcamp whatsoever. Everybody thinks Pilleater's art is completely useless. There's no value into his rambling writings, or no value into his electronic music he produces, or there is no value to any future painting he might do. Nobody likes that. There's more talented people out there, like 106 Point Never. Everybody thinks Pilleater is some Frank Castle fanboy until the last moment Frank Castle will stalk Pilleater because Pilleater knows way too much about Sam Hyde and his gang. Everybody thinks Pilleater is a hater when he's just under the influence of Jim Goater, Lydia Lunch, and the punk rock tradition that came from New York and LA. That's all full of hate, and now what you see is the remnants of countercurrents, that everybody is a hater and whatnot. Everybody thinks Pilleater is a sexual pervert who talks way too much about sexuality, or is trying very hard to be a John Gannett or part of that tradition, male feminism and whatnot. Everybody thinks Pilleater is just some fad that comes from the manosphere movement, and that Pilleater comes from the red pill, blue pill meme, when now in actuality that was just a YTMD or the Mandal Dog username that was made up in April something 2009. And that Pilleater was well known that he was a Pilleater even before such pill memes had existed, or that has nothing to do with pill memes whatsoever. Everybody thinks Pilleater will just give up his YouTube career and make new alt accounts just like Ryan Falk does. He probably has done that now. You can see his new YouTube channel at Francis Forever. Awesome. That's a pretty good introduction. I like it. I love it. I love it.
I just realized I was muted and I said the most profound things. So did you do the media on that as well, the video and music?
It's actually a Mouse on Mars song. I remembered when I was 14 and I burnt it from the CD, CD single I had, and
Cool.
I just wanted to do some visual. Actually, if you have the singles album by New Order, it talks to you about New Order being what New Order is supposed to be and what not supposed to be, and I was influenced by that template.
I get it.
And yeah, it's a funny indoor joke, but yeah.
The video is really wicked cool. I don't know, just something about the combination of the music and the whole thing. It has this kind of like weird pop art flavor to it that's jarring and interesting, and you're kind of really trying to keep up with it. It's just very interesting stuff. So wow, here we are again now. Like I said, I discovered you in, I think, 2016, 17, and my first appearance on any show was on your show. Do you remember that?
I do. I remember when YouTube, before the lockdown began, and it was still a silver age for sure.
Yeah, well said. We're talking 2017. My God, have things changed since then? It's wow. I can't even imagine, from that perspective, who I've become now and how much America has changed. The paradigms have changed, the culture, the media, politics. Wow, it's pretty massive, and it just seems to get more and more intense. So yeah, back then, American Zarathustra was a Facebook group. It was a Facebook page, and I actually showed my face on camera and did political commentary. People loved me because I was a supremely badass shitlord even back then. And at Facebook, I don't think they had quite the mechanisms quite set up yet as they do today. And people were like, wow, man, this guy is, speaking the truth, and they wanted to get involved. And so I just did commentary videos. I started my comics and online art of it, this, that, and the other thing, and then became American Zarathustra. But tell me a little bit about the history of Pilleater. Now, when did you start, and what did you go to school for?
I went to school as an English major, but I also was an Asian studies minor, and I had many disciplines I wanted to do, and I was mostly liberal arts, but just going around school for 5 years and then an additional 2 years at an actual art school to get my art journalist background, you could safely say I've been in academia for at least, about 7 years or so. But all around that time, when you have that much free time, you can do whatever you want and go online and, like you said, be a shitlord, and not a shit lib, and do whatever you want.
Yeah, it's much better to be a shitlord. So what's your relation to the arts and to the white identitarian sphere?
The interesting part is that I didn't get into the far right activity until I was a teenager, and it was just out of curiosity, out of my own political science interest, and it really began with just studying what the far right was about, and one thing leads to another. You're looking at radical stuff like it's a joke, but then you actually discover more softer terms like, like you said, white identitarianism and whatnot. And then one thing leads to another, and now I find friends who are into that. I'm involved, and less the whole shaming thing happens. People are afraid to be associated with the far right because we live in such a clown world, liberal stuff. But once you understand that subculture, you start to know what you're doing is a completely moral and ethical cause. I mean, even in graduate school, the past 2 years, I had to remain silent and call myself as pronouns, he and him, all the time. And that gets to you a lot where you have a space where you can express anti-liberalism, but you want to keep it avant-garde and artsy and almost like you want to try to tell people there are different realities and isn't so much a wignat thing, but let alone that there always has been anti-liberal, anti-modern forces. And I think that really has to do with the avant-garde. People will persuade you and say, no, it's about social justice. It's about some weird egalitarian communism. But it's not exactly those points at all. It's about you as a person, as an egoist, trying to find your space. And people have expressed themselves in many different ways. And the reason why I found that kind of far right space interesting is because it's pretty much the only anti-liberal kind of punk force happening, even though it may take shape in different forms. You kind of have to divide yourself from the loonies into the just people. And it's kind of funny because so many of my opponents and friends love to call me as loony, and I have jokingly called it, oh, that's queer culture, quote unquote, as an indoor joke. But the fun part of it all is just as long as you write about it and do your art and craft, you could express yourself. Just try to do what's morally right and ethically right. And I see myself as someone who wants to contribute to politics in a weird way and criticize liberalism. But I'm never the type of person that you could just put in a little category and say, oh, that guy's racist, or that guy's an idiot. That guy is Charles Manson or something. I'll only say those things just to be transgressive and to hurt the opponent. And you see people like Frank Hassel and Sam Hyde already doing that. So.
So, yeah, because I feel that people don't really understand you/your art, like your persona and your whole approach. And it's actually very complex. There's a huge amount of pop culture in it, and you kind of overlap into other spheres that you're interested in, such as Asian Aryanism, which I think is obviously everybody knows that, I have my whole time in Asia where I lived for 5 years, and I sort of incorporate certain thoughts and ideas and philosophical perspectives into my conversations with people. Although it sort of throws people off. There's a natural knee-jerk kind of like, well, that's not us, kind of mentality. And whatever, that's not really the subject of the show, but maybe you could kind of open up a little bit on some of the different things that you've done in terms of like your vlogging, your YouTubing, your artwork, your music, just to help the audience get to know you better. And then we're going to get into some topical things. And of course, your review of the American Renaissance Conference.
Yeah. The Pilleater name was established on April 5th, 2009. I was a You're the Man Now dog user, or ytmnd.com. And this was a website that existed before memes, and memes were called fads. And this is at the tail end of the aughts period. And as a young kid, I just wanted to make memes and kind of celebrate that fact. It was very apolitical at the time, but when I was 16, I was uploading oh yeah, Mr. Krabs stuff on ytmnd.com, and there's a YouTube channel by Know Your Meme that actually cites Pilleater as one of the innovators. Wow. Oh yeah. I even put it on my website too, of all how Pilleater, you can go back, and from 2009 to 2011 that Pilleater is cited as an early innovator. So I was highly into that alternative 4chan culture. I wasn't a 4chan surfer, but I was more into demo scene stuff. And kind of computers and whatnot. And I saw YTMD as an visual site. I spent most of that time when I was an undergraduate, but at that same time, I was reading, Julius Evola and stuff like that, and esoteric stuff. But I kept most of that stuff to myself. And I always see myself as an artist. And it wasn't until the end of 2016 when I was getting out of undergraduate was I on this obscure podcast called The Stark Truth with Robert Stark. By the way, I bet he's still going to this day, Robert Stark. And that was just something I just wanted to reach out and be his co-host and help get stuff on. The whole Asian Aryanism thing happened because as an Asian studies major, it's kind of this knee-jerk reaction where
if you're saying this in 2016, you look a few years later, there's no denial that China has this world power, and it's kind of a global force happening. And
Yeah.
the sad part of it all is all the anime we consume in and video games, that's all some type of Asian related, and it's influencing our minds, and that could be a problem for such white nationalist scenes where it's not that it's a good or a bad thing, but it's kind of being the outcome that if we kind of worship the Asian sphere, eventually there'll be this Eurasian Evolian master race that will take us over. And it's funny because some Wignats will hear that as a meme, and it is meme worthy, but at the same time, it's actually a serious thing. I mean, the word was kind of made up of a joke in person with Al Stankard or Harlan Dennison back in 2016, but I kind of went with it and kind of just use it as a brand name. But aside from that, I've kind of moved on. I just talk about a lot of things, whether that's queer culture. That was something in 2018 where I described that post Unite the Right failed is because the right became aware of subcultures, and that what's worshipped now, and even in the liberal arts, is how if you're gay, black, or trans or something, and the same logic applies in white nationalism, and that can be an issue because it's why there's infighting so much, and that being downgraded to that superficial thing. That's why you saw the Nazbol vortex happening in 2019 and today, where you now have this kind of anti-capitalist Marxist force of Keith Woods talking about.
Yeah.
But there's a lot to say, and being on the internet, I kind of realized that I make data, I make things. What turns out to be just shit posts, like you're looking at all my archives, and I love it all. Data is data, right? These shit posts are more than that, and they have value, and people underlook people's shit posts, right? There once was a time where there were websites where people collected Pepe memes, and here's my rare Pepes I have. And this kind of is just glittering images and flashing images that pass us. Yet, if we're super productive and make videos every day, whether it is Chris Chan or some obscure locale of sorts, people express themselves in many different mediums, and people will find your art no matter what. And it doesn't matter how good you are or bad you are. It's as long as you express yourself, you can learn more about yourself. And as you're scrolling my videos, I look how pretty the water tab marks are. And it's almost like video diaries of what I was thinking at that time.
It's amazing. Yeah. I mean, I feel the same when I look at my own channel. Like, oh, yeah, I remember when I was going through that, or when that was the hot topic, or this or that.
I'm looking at, I'm seeing The Beautiful Wife of Randy Stair. That was a very controversial one where I tried to say the Danny Phantom shooter was exploited, and everybody hated me for that. And those little things, people will like say, oh, Pilleater must be joking. I wasn't joking. I was just trying to think about what my thoughts were. They probably changed a bit, but the point of being is that, oh yeah, Randy Stair, it's sad that the white youth out in Pennsylvania, where I'm from, have to suffer from falling in love with a fictional Danny Phantom character and then losing your mind and going haywire, postal, and it's sad that happens. And I'm just saying it should be further investigated. But yeah, things like that, you look back and you're like, yeah, I got to save this. I got to get the transcripts. I got to put this in a book for future generations. I don't care who reads it, but it's important.
Speaking of books, you've published a few books. Now, you publish novels, or tell us a little bit about your publishing experience.
I have about 8 publications. The first one came out in 2016, but a lot of the early books were written back in 2012, 2013, when I was much younger. But some of the first books came out, they're kind of by year. Almanai's Babyface was kind of just a White House Peter Sotos type of book of sorts. And I kind of look back at it with funniness, and then there was Trip, and that was kind of something I wrote when I was 23. And my friend was reading that to me the other day out loud, and I'm just like, I cringe at it, being like, oh yeah, I remember I wrote that. But I still love it. And then there was a time where I had AsianArianism.com, and that was getting traction. But I had articles written for that, and I put it in a manifesto about stalking Patrick Highland. I look at that, and this is like an artsy weeb version of Carl Schmitt. And then I wrote a pamphlet for The Stark Truth with Robert Stark, because I thought that podcast with Robert Stark was the most underlooked pre-recorded podcast right before Blood Sports, before, broadcasting of Come Town and Red Scare and all that. And then I wrote some books about board games, about Ludism, and about a Bob Black fake anarchist pamphlet called Queer Culture, which I think it needs a big rewrite. But some of these books are just standalones, and the last two books, 60-Second Wipeout Volume 1, and it doesn't have to be like that. They're on Amazon, but those books are really interesting because they're more in zine style. Both of them are 40,000 words long and kind of are in the same tradition, written like a punk zine or a journal, but they have that kind of Twitter, Emile Saran type of witty epigraph stuff. And that's what's interesting about Twitter and things like that. It's like unpublished Twitter, and you can just pick it up and read from whether. And it's just been producing with the written word and see what you can write, because sometimes the best work is not online, and it's something you obtain physically, and I think that's really special too.
It amazes me how culturally literate you are. People tend to kind of put themselves in little niches according to the stuff they like, but you have a really, really broad range and of aesthetics, or at least aesthetic sensibilities. And I think it's pretty astonishing. And I think that it's something that people in the White Art Collective can learn from, and certainly should. There's a kind of a colossal artistic spirit here, and it seems like you're just sort of using every medium at your disposal to get your thoughts out, to express yourself. And I'm not sure if what would you say is your kind of message or moral core, or a certain kind of path that you're on that, really distinguishes you among others?
I mean, not to sound cliche, but it's like anti-liberalism, right?
Okay.
Anti-liberalism being, we're associated in that scene, and people would say the word dark enlightenment, and whether how far you want to say that's some kind of, depending how far you are on the right-wing spectrum, we can all agree that some dark enlightenment or anti-liberalism basically means to overthrow the establishment and change values so the good life is accomplished. It isn't so much living in decadence, but understanding decadence. Like, it's okay to watch Larry Clark's Kids or read Hubert Selby Jr. The point is to be straight edge, to be Christian, to have a religious foundation on that. And I see my art as not some, people call me some like decadent guy doing whatever, but it's more on the fact that art is expressive, and you can come from many different backgrounds and say whatever's on your mind, and doesn't care what anybody thinks. And I say that the union, what's happening right now is that, and you can see this in the work of Sam Hyde and Frank Hassel, is that they are against the system. And the real problem with the system isn't the patriarchy or whatever. It's actually this kind of globalist, evil capitalist system that sucks the soul out of the natural organic nation of people. And whatever you want to take how far that is, I think by just, reading Julius Evola or something like that, it could help people. But I'm not running a Julius Evola book club, but I am saying is that there are closed-minded people and there will be leftoids, and I think it is okay to piss them off sometimes. And as for, white people and white interests, that's okay too. It's something to protect as well. It's just when you push someone, they will push back. And so as long as people demand they have an identity and say, I want this, I want that, instead of being, pretending it's not there or living another day by the paycheck. And as you ignore those things, the enemy will take you over. And that's what I'm seeing right now. There's a lot of coward people out there. And that's what needs, I think. And if any message for a white identity, a white identitarian politic, what has to be understood is that there's just some whites that don't want to, stand up for themselves. And I think there's a pushing point where they have to speak up instead of just pretend it's not there. And I think that requires a lot of criticism and a lot of red pilling for sure.
So anti-liberalism is the thread that goes through all your different art, video, music, books that you author, and etc. Do you maybe talk a little bit about your music as well? And I'd like to maybe end the show with one of your songs. There's a funny song that mocks out communists that I really like, and we'll play that at the end of the show. But how do you make music? What's your music all about?
Well, actually, it's funny because my brother is a musician, and when I was really young, I was told to play guitar at 14, and originally I was supposed to go to Berklee School of Music,
Wow.
and yeah, my family taught me to play sitar, and
Sitar. Wow, cool.
where I had a callus on my finger, and my
Mm,
sitar teacher, he was in a movie. I won't mention his name, but he was a really great guy. He lives in the neighborhood, and I was into Indian music and I was trying to get into Berklee, but it just wasn't my thing.
mhm,
And I decided to do Asian studies instead. And this is like more than 14 years ago.
yeah,
So just learning a keyboard and whatnot at that young age, as long as I can remember, I think I was 15 into Mouse on Mars and weird electronic music and like Aphex Twin and things like that. And one
yeah.
thing leads to another. And I'm in my little office room right now, and it's a bunch of board games and synthesizers in here. And so I kind of just work on that discipline alone. And it's mainly a family influence, but I work with electronic music and all that. And recently, it was about a decade ago, I did a chip tune release, and it was called TJ Quado, and that was like a 7-inch. And back then, when you had MySpace Music,
Mhm.
I was only 17 at the time. That did pretty well, but I had to take a break from music, and music was just a hobby. And it wasn't until midway in undergraduate did I pick it up again and went on the vaporwave craze. And I had a tape that sold pretty well. And George Clanton, who is a vaporwave musician, he got that tape and he said, "I absolutely love it. Would you open up for me for 100% electronic in Brooklyn?" And I said, "I
Dude.
couldn't because I was in graduate school." But a lot of those little connections, is interesting for sure. And going to those shows and concerts are interesting. But now I've been messing with I have a few music releases, and they can all be seen on Chom Charity music link tree, or just my link tree, and you can probably find some, or just search a Dishogs name of the Feven Universe name, and you'll see all that stuff linked,
Yeah,
or even my
that's it.
Bandcamp. But
Yeah. Your link tree, by the way, is in the show notes of this. So for anybody who'd like, and it's enormous. It's amazing. You just keep scrolling.
it's a little. I had to make a second link tree just for my
Oh,
music.
good God. Yeah.
I'm getting,
So
I'm getting addicted to the link tree stuff. I might even make a
okay,
third one.
right. So under another name, right? Like, how many names do you have?
Well,
We have a really, really exciting show today. I'm extremely happy to have everybody in the chat. If you could all please share the show in your networks as well. Pilleater is really somebody who's, I think, not well understood, and somebody who can bring so much more dimension to the white identitarian sphere. I want to ask you: are you connected to the White Art Collective at all, or what are your thoughts on the White Art Collective?
I actually enjoy White Art Collective, and I remember when they first came on the scene, I was in the chat whenever they had live streams for that, and I often was commenting and whatnot. And I do like the music a lot.
Mhm.
I remember one act was called Dystopian Park. I don't even know what happened with that. It was just a little electronic act that sounded like early Joy Electric. And
Nice.
yet, well, a lot of that is interesting because, I love your art that you're contributing to it as well. And I
Mhm.
like that whole scene, what they're trying to do.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not personal with the guys, but I do like what's being put out, and it kind of. I mean, if you want my music criticism right now, I remember when I was a teenager, there was an obscure website called Micetrap Distribution, and it was some like neo-Nazi skinhead stuff out of New Jersey, and
Yeah.
they would sell like the most brutal rock against communism stuff. And this
Mm.
was during a time when I was listening to like power electronics and metal, and it was just this
Okay.
immature kind of like racist type of stuff. But if
Mhm.
you look at it, the whole that spectrum is kind of almost a joke if you look at it in the past. And I'm not associating anything with that scene, but it always reminds me that White Arts Collective, I mean, especially, you don't want to be associated with that type of
Mm.
extremeness that Mice Trap Distribution has had in the past. And I've seen now there's more clarity, definitely with this post identitarian scene that is happening, and isn't so much the you know classical be a white supremacist 1488 stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that was Mice Trap like years ago. But I remember being nostalgic for that transgression. The transgression's kind of going out. I just fear that transgression coming out because you know what they say, right? Bad optics, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
LARPing as a Hollywood Nazi type, all the classic, Metapedia definitions and all.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
no, I think White Arts Collective is definitely onto something if it's more about being white and
Mhm.
that expression alone. But I can't speak for them at all. But I do like their magazines they are putting out.
Okay, so we're the White Art Collective is associated with White People's Press, White People's Quarterly. It's funny. I guess I'm going to jump ahead a little bit here because you're going to be reviewing the recent American Renaissance conference, and you saw my art for sale there. So I wanted to just mention that I spoke to the editor of White People's Press today about basically selling my art through his site. So people could buy prints, posters, even like, t-shirts or mugs. I don't know. We haven't figured that out quite yet, but I'm excited about having more of my art out there for sale, basically. So yeah, this is exciting. There's a lot to talk about, but let's just talk a little bit about some topical things, what's going on right now. Now, what was your response to the verdict of Kyle Rittenhouse being not guilty today?
I was relieved because, blowing up in my super secret Telegram chat, everybody was saying it's not guilty, not guilty. And I remember texting, "Oh, come on, drum roll," and then not guilty. And I'm just kind of relieved. And it reminds me of the same relieved when Donald Trump won the election, where at least people have common sense and at least there's some type of, because I thought the whole thing was a kangaroo case to make them look bad and to shun us, but at least there's common sense and you can defend against yourself if they're not just peaceful protests. They're a violent riot that's happening.
Right. I follow a lot of these court cases right now. Charlottesville is going on right now with Cantwell and Spencer, and it's I'm following the reports on it through Telegram because, of course, Telegram seems to be the kind of the place to go as far as finding channels that are actually honest about white identitarian news and this kind of thing, and you get very intelligent takes. The Western Chauvinist is an excellent channel. Anyway, are you familiar at all with what's going on with the Seville case?
My friends will text it on and on. Tiger Gin and Augusta Soul Invictus over at their channel are giving reports on what's happening and what they're saying in court. It is very interesting. Now I was there at Unite the Right, and I guess I was kind of a bystander, even though I was right in the center of all that action happening. I think it's a very strange case for sure, and I always feel like I'm not a lawyer, but it seems like there are some people who were super invested into activism and being open, and now some of those kids are in court in the Charlottesville scene trying to be witnesses or whatnot, and I don't know. I feel bad. It's kind of like I hope the best can happen and that people can have some kind of mercy. I wouldn't. Again, I'm not read up on what is actually happening in court. Again, Tiger Gin and Augusta Soul Invictus talk about a lot, but I just hope for the best. When I was there, I just peacefully there. I went in, I went out. I didn't fight or anything, or I got away from danger. But for the people, I guess, you're inciting violence, or is it some Fetty setup? It goes many different ways and many different.
It's very much a Fetty. Very much a Fetty setup. Cantwell, I guess, is destroying the other side, and I'm just sort of following it. But what it usually boils down to is the judge and the jury and the lawyers are all on the other side, and it's there's no way to win cases, no matter how honest and truthful and clever and what data and evidence you have. Somehow or other, they just all conspire against you, so that it's a joke. But that's another topic. Anyway, so here we are. I'm having you on the show to tell us about this year's American Renaissance Conference. I'll put that up on the screen. Tell us about the experience. I planned to go this year. I did my research, flights and this and that, and hotels, and I got all excited about it. There were some choices I had to make, and I felt like maybe next year. I felt kind of sad about it, but I had some people ask me, could we sell your work at the conference? And I'm like, God, yes, So I prepared my artwork and prints and etc. And so you saw it there, which is good. I'm really happy. I'm hoping that some people at the American Renaissance Conference are enjoying my artwork now. But walk me through it, man. What was it like? I'm really excited to go sometime.
This was my second American Renaissance. My first one was in 2017. I got my tickets in May, coming from Philadelphia to Nashville. I got in to Thursday night and Ubered there on that Friday afternoon. Great park, Montgomery State Park. It's a great place, the lodge. But this year you had to go through 2 police security services just to show your name, pat you down. That's kind of a first time, if I recall. It's a great environment. Because a lot of the best minds, and if you wanted to call it race realism, it's specifically in that category, but as well as I would say far right activism, show up in suit and tie. And kind of there's this old school tradition there that's still there. And there's some familiar faces. And I want to take a shout out to Dave, who this is the second time I've met in person. And I guess he was showing up every year. And, he's not online or anything like that, but he's a consumer of this stuff. And it's great. I met him and I had a farewell with him too at the Nashville airport. Great guy, by the way. But Friday night, the cheese and the wine, that's all great. Always the Friday is the best, right? And then when you get to your, I would strongly suggest to get your hotel at the lodge because you want to be in that hall and wake up. The first time I did it, I was on an Airbnb 20 minutes away, but so much better to be in the hotel. But anyway, huge day on that Saturday, 9:00 sharp, and great speakers. I love hearing F. Roger Devlin. The first time I met him was at a Countercurrents event back in Philadelphia when Sexual Utopian Power came out, and his speech on envy, which is now up on a transcript now, just today on Amren.com. Hopefully the videos will be up soon, but his speech on envy is a really good articulate one. I always think Devlin has something great to say. What I also love about these speeches as well is that there's always coffee break. And between coffee break is very important because when you're just mingling and socializing, the most important part, I think, you'd be surprised how many people are in the internet scene and just know, oh, I know you that. And there's a lot of first time meets. And I was able to make 6 contacts on Telegram.
That's got to be so cool. Yeah.
And I got 5 of those guys in my Telegram chat now. And now I have a little scene going on there. Cool. All I had to do was just a single Saturday because because I went by a fake name, Gavin Hadaway, and they asked, so your name's Gavin? Well, actually my name's Pilleater. Oh wait, you had that, and they'll always will say something about me or something, and then I just say, hey, join the Telegram, whatever, and that's the most important part about these things, especially with the coffee breaks, by the way.
Sure. Yeah.
A lot of great speeches. Michelle Malkin, whatever your opinion on her is, first time seeing her. She has a very interesting speech about tiger moms and rooftop Koreans going against the open border blacks, which I think is very controversial, especially being part of Conservative Inc. And now you're saying that, Prio Brimlow, the casual classic stuff, the always saying what to expect next year, always like what he has to say. Now this year there was no David Cole, good guy who wrote Republican Party Animal, and Colin Flattery. They both had a sickness. It wasn't because they bailed; they were both sick, and it's understandable. And I mean, I've met David Cole in LA before with Robert and Matt and that whole gang with Luke Ford, and I want to see Dave again, but you can't win everything, right?
Could you expand a little bit on Michelle Malkin's speech and what that, because there's obviously going to be a lot of pushback from certain people in our sphere. And, I don't know if there's anything you can say that can bridge her presence at Amren with those people and their views, or, I don't know, I just want to kind of give that a run over.
Well, this is my first time listening to Michelle Malkin. I know I've heard the name drop so many times on Amren. But this reminds me of a one time when Gregory Hood tried to get Peter Thiel into the countercurrent scene, and that didn't go so well because then SPLC did a hit piece on them, and I felt bad. But Malkin, book topics on open borders, whatever. This is classic Royper material. It's basically infighting within conservative Inc. to try to push it into that intersectional far right stuff. And whatever you think that there's some political correctness or civic nationalism happening in the scene, I think it's more on the type of it's not just diplomacy, but it's more on par with people agreeing with certain issues. And some people, will say, oh, it has to be more out there. You have to be more Wignatty and stuff like that. But I think Amren in the past, and I was just about to say this, David Cole being Jewish and, all doing the most, but he was a Holocaust denier. He's a Holocaust revisionist.
Right.
He knows he's in that transgressive pseudo punk scene. And that's kind of whether your opinion on Jewish behavior is whatever it is. Point being is that at least Malkin can give a voice at Amren and then justify, it makes everybody a little bit normal, and it makes Groyper thing. I think it's more of a Groyper force coming in to make people more
right. If I can share my thoughts on this, so my view of identity politics is a huge spectrum. I don't know how to express this, but basically, I know where I am on that spectrum. I know who my people are, and I have my ideological roots, etc. But and I look at this in terms of, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. That people like Michelle Malkin and the Groyper scene, etc., can act as a gateway to where we are, or and even maybe beyond. And so when I see these kind of hardcore Wignat kind of guys mock it out or something, I really feel like, you guys are not really seeing opportunity here. You have to see this as opportunity. I don't know, a couple of years ago, we didn't, we were even more ghettoized than we are now. But people like her in this particular position, etc., are moving the Overton window. And for her to appear, think of it from like a mid-wit normie perspective. Oh my God, Michelle Malkin spoke at a white nationalist conference. That's how they're going to look at it. So they're going to kind of say, why would she do that? What did she say? Wait, is it really what's going on? And it just kind of softens up the path. It kind of greases the slide, and it allows people to start to come into our sphere and look at our ideas, and that's it. So, I don't think that I don't know how she could go full, hardcore right wing or what have you, or that she even should. I don't know that that's necessary. I think it's okay that there is a spectrum, but at the same time, I'm kind of seeing it in terms of like, how can we leverage this, in to our benefit? And I don't mean that in an underhanded, sneaky sort of way. I would love to have Michelle Malkin on the show and say, hey, what did you talk about?
Well, my only concern is there's still people in the scene that say, Amren is not hardcore enough. And I've talked about, and we see this in white nationalist circles where it's like, well, there's always some POC person. It can't be full on white national, and it's always some purity spiraling happening.
Yes.
The little stuff. And that's where you have the little sex happen, where I bet you there's probably older millennials who think Michelle Malkin is too paused, and that makes Amren bad, and Amren is there for conservative stuff or something. But you have to understand the bigger picture here, that Amren has been around since '94 and Amren has always, the scene was totally different from 2017, where you had just the Trump train and just party goers and drug guys, all that in the classic Amren. You had Spencer and Johnson and Freiberg and Dragani in the same room in 2017.
Yeah, it's wild.
And that's pretty wild. I think I mean I'll talk about it later, but Amren has cleaned image. You want to say Malkin is making Amren not hardcore enough, but the thing is, Amren's starting over again, and it's a good thing too.
Yes, yeah. So I guess that's just my angle and my statement to these guys on our side that are very rigid about this, is that, play the game, look at politics like a chessboard, see who can you work with, how can we, because we're not going to flip a switch and then the Western world is going to be 100% white. There's still going to be people of color living with us, Native Americans, and biracial people, etc. We have to find some kind of way in which they're actually working to protect us rather than to destroy us. That's literally the opposite of the communist approach. The communists weaponize people of color rather than, whereas we could be talking to them saying, every single thing you enjoy and own and all these freedoms and medicine and education and technology is from us. And why would you not protect that, right? If China goes into Tibet and invades and slaughters the people and exiles them and genocides them, then it's no longer Tibet, right? So why would you want to be a part of something like that? Because when whites are gone, if whites ever are gone, then America is gone, and everything you know and cherish and value is gone, and even a part of you is gone. So I feel like, there's going to be people that mock me for saying that, but I feel like that mentality is sort of like a gym room, sort of like check out my muscles kind of mentality. It's like we have to think broader than just like who's tougher than the next guy, who's being more based. That's very kind of high school mentality from my perspective. But
Yeah.
Anyway, how about some other people? How was Jared Taylor's speech?
Jared was great too. I think it's always great hearing Jared Taylor. And the one thing I have to tell people about Amren is that you got to remember that Jared Taylor, Peter Brimlow, and Sam Dixon, they're not going to be around forever. They're
Right.
getting pretty old. And
I know.
some of these guys, the next 10 years, they might just give up and then we won't have an Amren anymore. So I strongly suggest everyone to attend Amren next year and at least give Jared Taylor a handshake, a hug, talk to him.
My God,
Tell him you're on his side and listen to his speech in person, because I started to realize how important Taylor's speech is. And Taylor always jokes and says, I've been saying the same stuff every year. And but he does a humorous stuff too, but it's been getting really dramatic where, starting since the last 2 years ago, Taylor usually ends on a sad note. And it's always sad to see Taylor have a tear, and he cries up, giving this dramatics. And I just realized how Taylor is so passionate with what he's doing. And this whole organization is that he's doing this for us.
Yeah.
And in a way, Taylor is something we definitely should, we should at least buy one of his books, and he's a great guy. And I love his mustache too.
I know, it's like, we're getting serious now when Jared Taylor's got a mustache,
in person, he's got a really, online, he's considered to be an Ivy League, intellect, but in person, he's a very funny guy. A lot of things you'll never know about him in person.
I think he's extraordinary. I mean, he speaks fluent Japanese and French. Do not challenge him to a push-up contest as well. I mean, Uncle Jared will kill you on that. But yeah, I mean, he's the grandfather of us all in a way. I mean, at least, people who came in and say like, the Trump era and that, because prior to that happening in that kind of era, it seemed like that was, I don't know, it was just off most people's radars. The idea of like white identity and all of these things it's not mainstream, but I don't know. It's I guess, to you and I, this is our mainstream. This is what's normal to us. This is the, how many books and speeches and interviews and, content have we. I think I've seen every single Amren Jared Taylor video that I could consume, as I was like coming up into this.
Google has shadow banned Jared Taylor. It's Google. The first thing Google did when they shadow banned videos back in 2018 is they got rid of his old school videos on YouTube, and they shadow banned searching his name on YouTube. And it's impossible to find an American Renaissance speech or a Jared Taylor interview on YouTube, and all that stuff's been gone because Google knows how powerful he is.
Yeah, yeah, it's a testament to what he is and what he's done. But at the same time, it's infuriating. Sorry, it makes you mad to see what they did. You can find his work on Odyssey now. Like Odyssey is the place. So like if you want to shitpost or you want to get people connected to Amren, which I do frequently as a part of my online activism. I'll send Amren videos to normies and conservatives and Trumpers and all that. And, again, like get out of the mental ghetto, the mental echo chamber of like, let's all just kind of flex our muscles and, kind of flex to each other about how tough and cool we are. Get out there and change the damn world. Like all this bullshit about, hey, I'm cooler and tough and I've got extreme views. That means shit if you're not out there fighting in the war. And so this is Jared Taylor's videos are probably one of the best means to get this across. I cannot tell you how many times I've engaged in like info war on, say, YouTube or rather Facebook, and I'll post some Jared Taylor speeches. And whoever I'm fighting, that lefties they're never going to change. They just do the same bullshit, and then in the end, they just insult you. Insults are not arguments, kind of thing. But for the 50 people that were reading the thread and watching, those are the people that you're touching. Those are the people that you're exposing to new information and saying, "Oh, wow, there's a whole academic sphere of scientific study and data gathered up over decades." And all housed in this wonderful place called American Renaissance. And that will always be there. That's kind of like the foundation of our temple in some way. And, again, it's just, I don't like to see people disrespect Jared Taylor and American Renaissance, regardless of, like, oh, it's boomer or some crap. Like, cut it out. Have a little respect. These guys forged the path that got you where you are now. So that's kind of my attitude about that. But let's continue. Who else was at the conference?
Well, instead of Taylor, we also had Colin Flattery's podcast singer. He showed off some songs because Flattery was not there. Very, very Alan the barbershop guy. Yeah, he actually gave me one of his albums for free. I liked his music. It's just when he was playing the video collage, I thought it was so disturbing about how like don't let the black kids get you mad. Where they were showing clips of blacks attacking whites, and he was supposed to be making it humorous, and then it is funny to laugh and some of the conundrums, but then it's like, well, that's all this non-white violence on whites. It's just it's too much.
Yeah, it's hard to watch.
But it's hard to watch, but you learn about it, and I think that's the point of Flattery and Alan. They're good people. But afterwards, there was a debate because there was no Dave Cole. It was Jared Taylor and Gregory Hood versus Sam Dixon, and I forget the other guy. I don't know if it was Chris Roberts or something. He works at Amren, but they had a debate together. Questions: pro-Trump, anti-Trump, ethno-state, anti-ethno-state, politics and stuff. Very quick. Hopefully that will be online as well. Then the dinner happened. And dinner's great. Steak, more wine, more mashed potatoes, more apple pie. Love the dinner. Everyone should buy the dinner if considering. Go to the banquet. Banquet's very important. Do not go out the lodge and get their food or whatever. Go to the banquet because you get at the little table, you meet 9 new people, and you just talk and relaxing. And Gregory Hood spoke during the banquet. And I think the Gregory Hood speech was a very fiery speech. Wow. And it's probably one of the highlights of this Amren because especially during the part where Hood made people think about, the Kyle Rittenhouse case for a second. And I was kind of that scene too. People were just standing up, clapping, screaming. Probably the most loudest part at Amren came with Hood's, climax of this is all about whether Rittenhouse gets in or gets off. Point is, this is a war on whites, and it was just very huge energy in the room. And that was like my favorite part. Awesome. And it's great because today, hearing that Rittenhouse is not guilty, it's it's great. It's very
I've been so excited all day
really
about that. I really was just over the top, over the moon, so happy about that. Been following it very closely. Clearly, everybody understands how important the case is to America, but obviously to whites. This is it's really a pivotal point, and I'd say like we need to capitalize on that. That the left would capitalize like crazy had he lost.
Supposedly, I'm invited to a Twitter space later, like tonight at midnight, where they want to have a Rittenhouse celebration.
Nice.
But then I look on my Twitter spaces and you see the scoring leftists being Rittenhouse did murder, and it's the same suspects over again. Very weak, liberal-minded people who don't see the light. And the news is common sense, right?
Yeah.
Second Amendment. But Hood is prophetic in the way that energy, that force, that prayer, that belief gets across. Rittenhouse is off. There is hope for saving, white America, all that. And that's what Hood was getting across. And that's a good thing. So the energy is there, just hidden.
Yeah. And again, we need to be able to read the signs and capitalize on it. We should be planning, well, how do we use this? What kind of meme war do we want to get into? How can we create more media on this topic? How can we get that media in front of our people more? How can we leverage this legally and show that, okay, according to this case, that sets a precedent for these other things. Again, like had he lost, the lawyers, the Jewish lawyers would be coming out of the woodwork, and that they would have like overrun so much more of what we are and what we do. So I just can't overemphasize like what an important case this is. How was Sam Dixon's speech?
Yeah, well, the one thing which is really important is after Hood is you got to remember their Saturday night parties too. And
okay.
What's
an Amren party like?
So there's two special nights. There's the Friday, and the key is you want to get there as soon as possible. I would say noon on Friday to the lodge. That's my mistake I made. But you want to get there on Friday. But Saturday, when you have all the speeches right after dinner, everyone goes to the cabin across the river, and that's the very special place, is the cabin hangout. And the cabin hangout, I think, is a very underground ritual annual thing that everyone should do. And the cabin is super nice because you have a fire, there's a full moon out, you're in a whole room with every other. People are just, had families with their kids, their dogs, and just in the little room with a sofa, and you can just sit down. I met more people and talking about Savitri Devi and Julius Evel and all that esoteric stuff.
Fabulous. See, I'm super
1 in the morning, right?
Yeah, I'm very, very much into the esoteric stuff for sure.
And that's what I was from like 9 till 12:30, 1 in the morning. Was I talking to brand new friends? Ian, who's now in the Telegram. I've been meaning to follow up on him. Great guy. And you'll meet these kids who are like, have you heard of Miguel Serrano? And I'm like, absolutely.
Oh yeah, nice, very nice.
And then we're just going on, and there's a little late so the hobbyists can find the room. And that scene, that cabin scene, beautiful. And
it's gorgeous.
Just if you're going to Amren, definitely go to the cabin when it turns dark, and that's when the amazing things happen. But then afterward, once you go to bed, get back at 1 in the morning, sleep for 6-7 hours, wake up starting at 7-9. Then you have Dixon and I can't pronounce his name, the Estonian guy. I just always butcher his name, Ruben. Yeah. Ruben, apologize so much.
I've seen him speak at Amren. I know who you're referring to.
Ruben, I'm sorry for butchering his name, but he wasn't there because what I liked about him is he didn't want to take a vax. And he couldn't come in our country, and so he just made a video cast. And the video cast, really cool, funny, good he's still active, and good he has values. Love what he does, and he's showing Estonian nationalism is here, still alive. Good stuff.
Wow.
Now Dixon usually concludes the event, and this is right before noon. And Dixon, I was talking to Dixon the day before because my friend Tiger Jin is really good friends with Dixon, and Dixon remembers me too in 2017 as my other associate is Doug Huntington, and he's good friends, and we are able to text each other too. He has my text contact as well, and it's funny because once you talk to Sam Dixon in person, he's a very open-minded guy. He knows, very well educated. And the funny part was when we were talking in a group on Saturday, or it was about Saturday or Friday. Yeah, around that time, both Saturday, Friday. I talked to him about, how, the state's kind of against us. And it's kind of bizarre that Joe Biden says Antifa is an ideal. And that our own president is saying Antifa is just an ideal, but we're like some political terrorist squad. Well, then the next day in his speech, I think this is just pure coincidence, but he in the middle of the speech is like, remember, this is what Joe Biden said. Antifa is just an ideal. And I was like, I wonder if Dixon got that from me. I mean, not to sound selfish or anything, but it's just funny. I think it's just total coincidence. But it just shows you how significant and telepathic that is.
Here's another fascinating thing I just caught in the news today before the show, that somebody asked fake President Brandon, what do you think about the Kyle Rittenhouse not guilty? And he said, well, I have to follow what the court says. We have a good court system. And so whatever they decided, I go along with. And I'm wondering if he even knows who Kyle Rittenhouse is. Just for starters, like, had he been on message and on script, he would have blah, 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 blah. And, of course, there's other people out there now that are saying, oh, no, we have to take it to federal court. But still, this is a beautiful, beautiful moment for our country and our people. And I let's just enjoy it. Let's celebrate it and enjoy it. And then let's take that energy and push it in a good, strong way, and take the momentum into our activism, into the health of our culture and our people. So yeah, it's a beautiful thing. Was there anything else you wanted to share about the conference before I play some of your music for the outro?
Yes, very important thought. Well, everyone has to disperse before noon. Keep in mind that if you take an Uber into the park, you can't Uber out of the park. You can Uber in, but you can't Uber out simply because there's no reception. So be sure, if you go to American Renaissance next year, that if you do Uber in or you come in, make sure you have friends to drive you out of the park, or at least get out there and get Uber reception in Burns and then go. But I would say if you Uber in to the park, make sure someone can drive you to the airport. I was lucky enough for my friend Tiger to drive me to the airport, and I thank him so much for that, especially when we had to disperse. Jared was saying, keep in mind, there is one Antifa among us who's taking pictures, so beware if you go out in the hallway. And with that stress in mind, I'm just like, oh, who's the rat among us?
Wow, that's
I didn't know who it was, but that definitely gets you obnoxious and trying to get an Uber back and then complaining. And then it's like, okay, good, Tiger got me out by noon, and I was able to catch my 6 o'clock flight. But it's just something to make sure about. And great people, just make sure when everyone disperse, make sure to shake everyone's hand and everybody has a good time and all that,
Nice. Wow, man. I'm looking forward to doing more shows with you, or talking to you more, thinking through what kind of content that we're doing, what culture we're building. I'm going to need to have you on Imperium Art, actually. I'm kind of pushing you into this on the show here.
Absolutely.
We'll have to, we'll talk about that later. But let's close out with some of your music here. Tell us about this song, I Am the Communist.
That was written on a Moog Prodigy, a vintage Moog Prodigy, which I rented for some time. And a lot on that Anna Akana album is kind of in tune with the 6-com Death in June neo-folk thing, but it was more on tune of this avant-garde Devo synth pop stuff. But I Am the Communist is a playful song about people who think they're communist, but it's very poetic for sure. But it's mostly a Moog Prodigy, what you're hearing, and a vocoder.
It took me a minute. I'm like, why is he making a pro-communist song? And then I realized you're mocking out communists, and then I started just laughing my head off. So, well, let me thank you so much for coming on the show. I want to thank everybody in the chat for the interesting conversation, for sharing this link. As always, it's you, the audience, that is more important, because you have to get this message out. Share this show and my other shows and Pilleater shows in your networks, so that we can share our culture, grow our culture, and have a lively and engaging culture. And you're about to engage in some really cool music in a second here. Any closing thoughts, Pilleater?
Those albums are great. Some of that digital only stuff. I kind of just wish I published the Anaconda stuff on vinyl if I had the money. But some of these great demos that I have, definitely would love to reissue this on like cassette tape or something. Some of these tracks is
Cool.
the Anaconda little release is a favorite of mine. I just wish I put more money into exposure for that one. But definitely love very nostalgic about the Moog Prodigy I recorded on that album with. So.
Good stuff. And where can people find you?
If you just go www.pilleater.com or youtube.com/Pilleater, there's a bunch of links there. I would suggest going by the link tree and discovering my books and music and all that.
Right.
Most likely my link tree will have everything. But
right. Link tree's in the show notes below this video. So, all right. Once again, thank you so much for joining me. I look forward to talking more in the future. Thanks again to everybody for joining me on American Zarathustra. We'll see you on the internets. And
thank you.
God bless Kyle Rittenhouse.
I am the communist. I am the communist. I play Tetris. Thou did nothing wrong. I am the communist. I drink lemonade. I hate capitalism, unironically. Your favorite band is Red Flag. I read it on my Jew. I am the I am the communist.